Hi, this is a video for anybody who's in recovery from trauma in particular, but really this is something that I feel that most everyone needs to hear. I want to talk a little bit about this concept of doing things that you don't want to do. And it's not so much a concept, but just it's become, or it is this assumed way of life. Like it's something that people assume that they have to do in order to recover, or in order to get better, or in order to improve your life. You need to start doing the things that you don't want to do. In your workout routine, for example, if you have a workout routine, which I do not, so I'll put that out there. But if you have one of these workout routines, there's this assumption that you're supposed to be pushing yourself beyond, perhaps there's an implication in my mind that you push yourself beyond the bounds of what you really want to do. Even if it's a subtle push, you're pushing yourself beyond the bounds of what you really want to do. Doing things like going to a job that you really can't stand, something you don't want to do. There's this implication that we're meant to do the things that we don't want to do because that is how you become a better human. It's how you become a really alive person who accomplishes things and is a valuable member of society, or is a valuable person to your own self, that you see yourself as a person of value. You start doing the things that you don't really want to do, such as working out, such as going to a job that makes you miserable, such as going to do an activity with friends that you don't really want to do, such as cleaning your house at any given moment, such as embarking on a new skill that you want to learn and forcing yourself to begin that process, and forcing yourself to sit through videos, or forcing yourself to read books that you don't want to read, forcing yourself to read things that you think you're supposed to read because you think that if you just read it, then you'll enjoy it, or you'll learn something from it. I would like to put forth that it is wrong for humans to do things that they don't want to do. Don't do things you don't want to do. As much as you can get in the flow of learning to recognize when you don't really want to do something, when something is not in alignment with you, that's what that means. Try to start recognizing when these things come up, and learn to notice the feeling inside of you that has this kickback reaction, that's this emotional kind of wave. I feel it around my solar plexus mostly, and sometimes between my solar plexus and my sacral chakra. So the solar plexus is the part of your body that's an energetic center, and it kind of tells you what is right and wrong for you. And the way that you can tune into your sacral, your solar plexus, that's what I'm saying. The way that you can tune into your solar plexus is to really pay attention to whether you feel this pull when you hear about something or think about something that's an option for you to do, whether you've given yourself the option or whether somebody else has given you the option. Or so when there's a choice, when there's a situation that comes up where you can do something or you cannot do something, pay attention to what is going on in your body and what you feel. Is there a little pull towards it, like you feel like a little lift and a pull forwards? Or do you feel sort of a sinking and a pulling back and downwards? So the pull forwards and the lift up, that is when your solar plexus is happy and it's saying, this is for me, that's me, let's do that. I want to do that. That's in alignment with who I am as a human. And when you feel it pull backwards and downwards, or pulling down, and you might feel it as a pit in your stomach, that's usually what I might say, is like, I feel a pit in my stomach about this. And I've gotten to where I notice a very, very subtle deviation in my stomach. It's not even, it doesn't, often get to a full-on pit in my stomach anymore, because I've really tried to tune into when my body is telling me whether something is in alignment with me or not. So we need to go back. This is a very, very basic thing that starts with when we're very little, especially in Western society. There's some incense burning, creating some smoke in my face. We are trained from when we're tiny that we are supposed to be doing the things that we don't want to do in order to be a person of value. So we've already listed a few of these types of things, but what is happening when we do that? When your solar plexus is telling you, when your body is telling you, sometimes your third eye might be telling you, your intuition is telling you, this doesn't feel, there's something, you might not feel it in your stomach so much if your chakras are not completely in alignment, or in your heart, but the upper chakras also tell you, is this really in alignment with me? Does it make my heart surge with something that feels sort of like love? Or does it set off my intuition to where you feel just this pull of like, oh, that sounds like just an idea that I think I'm meant to do, or something that really just kind of resonates with me on this subtle level. And you might feel it somewhere more around your head. But there is a bodily sensation that we have, and it's one of the two most basic sensations that we have, and that is your body saying yes or no. And it's about, is this in alignment with me, or is this not in alignment with me? Now, I am positing that especially for people who are victims of trauma or victims of abuse, in particular, people who are victims of abuse have been told specifically for a long time to keep doing things that you don't want to do. And what this does over time is that it teaches you, and it teaches your body, it trains your body to not only ignore these sensations so that they don't go away. They're still there. You don't train yourself to like things that you didn't already like. That's not possible. What you do, if it's something that you don't like and it eventually ends up as part of your life, that's because you've worked around to having that activity or that thing or that person be actually in alignment with you. But you're never to force yourself or to tell yourself or override this sensation that you don't want to do something. Because this is what is the piece that, like I said, it's taught to us from a very, very young age that we're meant to override this sensation. And in fact, we're never even told to look for it. We're told this is what you do because it's the right thing to do, or this is what people do. This is what people say when these things happen. You say you're sorry, whether or not you even know what that means. We tell children to say they're sorry before they even know what that means. And so it's this automatic thing that happens. And we tell children, you have to go to school, whether or not it's really in alignment with who they are and whether or not their bodies are telling them no. You tell them you have to stay at school and cry it out. You tell them all kinds of things that actually go completely against what the body is meant to tell you and what the body does naturally. Your body is brilliant, and it comes in with this dualistic system of yes or no. So if you can tune into that system, this is one of the most fundamental ways that you can recalibrate your system and get out of the patterning that led you to a place where others were abusing your boundaries. At a certain point, to a certain extent, other people don't necessarily notice that they are crossing your boundaries. But the person who's really doing it is you. You're letting people, or you've been taught that this is what you have to do. So your boundaries are being crossed, whether or not other people notice it. But you start getting outside, or your boundaries start getting weaker and weaker, and then more extreme boundary pushers start gravitating towards you and start gravitating towards your energetic system. And if you get really, really low boundaries, which happens with people who've grown up in situations of abuse, happens with people who've grown up in extreme childhood, is that you end up with these really diffuse boundaries that are hazy. A lot of people don't even recognize where they are. And abusers, people who really who have very strong boundaries that are not diffuse at all, those people gravitate towards people who don't have boundaries because it facilitates their ability to have these outsized boundaries that don't even recognize that other people are there. So these people who are abusers or have a tendency towards abuse are attracted towards people with these diffuse boundaries of their system that tells you yes or no. So an abuser can make somebody do something that they don't really want to do, and there might be just a hint of, I don't feel like that's the right thing for me, or that doesn't sound like something very fun for me. There might just be the tiniest hint of that within somebody who's going to be a victim within their system. There might just be a tiny hint of like yes or no. And what happens is that people who've been abused before do not notice this symptom, and it's something that they've learned is a regular part of making decisions and doing things in life, is that you have this aura of, I don't necessarily want to do this. My energy isn't telling me that I have extra energy to be able to enjoy something like that. I don't want to go to that party. I don't want to go to that football game. I don't want to go for a walk. I don't want to go for a run. I don't want to go ride that bike. I don't want to do these things right now. And you might not know what you want to do instead of those things, but we're going to start by noticing when we're doing things that we don't want to do, because that is the only way to uncover and start healing your solar plexus and the part of you that understands how it's meant to live your life. There is a part of you that fundamentally understands what is right and wrong for you and what is the exact way for you to live your life in a way that gives you enlightenment, that leads you towards high degree of quality of life, leads you to high satisfaction. And you have to be able to tune into what this is. So with human sexuality, this is another thing that is put forth in sex therapy in some perspectives. There is this accepted idea that some people who experience themselves to have a low sex drive, for example, are told and I said this is like one branch of sex therapy. Not all sex therapy says this, but it's a pretty accepted, standardized way of practice that you say to somebody, well, what happens when you're having sex, when you're already in the moment? And do you enjoy it then? And a lot of people might say yes, I do enjoy it, or I end up finding myself enjoying it when I'm already in the act. Or you say to somebody, but what is it like once you finish your workout? And a lot of people are like, oh, I love it. I'm so happy every time I finish my workout. I don't really want to go for a run, but when I've gone for a run and get myself trudged through that run, I feel amazing for the rest of the day. So there are a lot of people who have this experience of where it's been validated and it has been reinforced that if you do something that you don't like, that maybe there will be a person on the other side of that hump, on the other side of that decision in yourself who says, oh no, this was right. I should have done this. And it was good that I made that decision, to override my own sense of what is right and wrong, to override my enlightenment. What you're doing is that you're actually creating this feedback loop inside your psyche, inside your energetic body, that says, in order to do something or get something that I want to do, that I'm going to enjoy, I must let my boundaries be violated. I must violate my own boundaries of what is right or wrong in order to get this rewarding outcome. And let's say that again. You're creating a feedback loop. Society creates this feedback loop in people that if you do something that you don't want to do, you override your own intuition, then you're going to be able to get to where you're going. That's the only way to get to a goal. And what happens? We know that people burn out when it comes to working out or going to the gym. I hate gyms, by the way, but a lot of people seem to like the gym. I'm not sure for whom that's actually like real, because my sense is that a lot of people who go to the gym kind of complain about like, oh, I've got to go to the gym today, or they'll go join a gym and then kind of burn out because it's going to go join the gym, and the idea of going to the gym and the idea of working out is something that society tells you that you're supposed to like, that you're supposed to go do in order to be a person of value. You're supposed to be a member of a gym and go and work out for a certain amount of time and do whatever certain machine or do whatever certain routine or do some certain class, so that you can then tell yourself like, okay, I did this thing that makes me a person of value. But in that instance, you've had to already chip away at your sense of self and tell yourself like, I am not, my opinion doesn't matter, my own feelings, my body does not matter. This is something that society says that I should do, and so I'm going to do it. I'm going to override my sense of what my body actually wants to do and let somebody have sex with me. I'm going to override what my body is telling me to do and have sex. This is self-rape, effectively. It's what we are telling people to do, is engage in the violation of our own energetic body and our own sacred sexuality, our own sacred autonomy, our own sovereignty. That's what this sovereignty is that a lot of people have gotten downloads about. And it's become kind of a key word in the movement that's happening right now, and in the energy flow that's been happening in the past couple of years, is this term sovereignty. And what that's really talking about is, do you have the ability to notice and act on what is really right for you in any given moment? Even if that is, I don't know what's right for me, and I can't necessarily feel it, but my body is sitting on the couch and I can't really think of something else that I want to do. Now, there's one thing about leaning into depression, and there's something about, it's one thing to kind of lean into depression and just do stuff that kind of sinks you lower and lower. That's a very, very subtle way of letting your body violate its own boundaries, where you might start out being a little bit tired or a little bit sluggish and your energy is low, and then you kind of keep creeping down instead of noticing, instead of tuning in. This is when you're not tuned into like what I actually want to do. So the other half of this is tuning into that part of you that feels the lift, that feels this pull towards something. When we have depression, maybe like a clinical version of depression, when you're really in a rut, it's going to take noticing and tuning into that part of you that actually wants to do something, and noticing a very, very subtle version of what that is, and then grabbing onto that little thread. And it doesn't need to be something that's out like that intense. It could be, okay, I'm going to put a piece of paper in my lap and see what comes out if I have a pen. Like maybe I'll end up doodling, maybe I'll end up drawing something, maybe I'll end up having something to write about. Maybe I'll make a to-do list of like things that I would like to do. But you do something that's small that might actually give you a pull. I'll go find the remote to the TV and turn on a TV show where I feel like something that's like a lift of something that I actually want to do, where you suddenly have this feeling of hope come in, and that people can get that from something that's kind of demonized, like, for example, watching TV. But for a person who's depressed, being able to turn on a TV show that might help them get out of their body for just a minute and get into a feeling of hope. And this is like it's just about a hope for like things could feel happier. And if you ride that, it might include something like turning on the TV. It might include something like, I want to just take a nap instead of going to the gym. Or I just want to sit in bed and languish for a day or 2 days or a week or several months. But that's what I can tell, that's like what I actually want to do. That is the only thing that's my body is saying I want to do. If your body is not telling you to do something, if your body is not telling you to get physical and make you sweat something out, quote unquote, you should not be doing that thing. You are violating your own energetic body, your own sense of self, and you are minimizing your ability to be able to heal. It's the exact patterns that people, and this is not your fault, this is what society does. And in particular, like I said, victims who end up in abusive situations are people who've never really been able to tune into this sense of self in the first place, or they end up with somebody who fundamentally degrades it and makes it so that people can't really tell what's right or wrong, what do I want to do, what is the right choice for me. And you're actually letting somebody else dictate everything about your life through their sense of, I want to do that, I want to do that. Letting somebody else tell you where your inner pull is. In fact, they don't even acknowledge that you have an inner pull. But so this is something that I wanted to talk about because I get very frustrated even within the spiritual community of hearing just this casual, people just throw around, just do it the first few times and then you'll get in the habit of it. It's not true. Just do it the first few times and then you will want to do it. Then you will enjoy it. Then you'll finally be receiving the benefits. And that might be true, that doing something a few times will get you a different sense of what that is. If I do yoga a few times in a row, or a few times kind of regularly, my body starts noticing different things in different sessions. But if my body, after 4 times in a row of yoga, or is in my mind, my spirit is not really feeling drawn to it, if it suddenly becomes something that's giving me a sinking feeling, which is, by the way, shame. So we have this dualistic system of yes and no. The other way to think of it is love versus shame. So if something gives you this that's what this feeling is. It's a feeling of shame. It's a feeling of violation of self. I discard and minimize myself so much, which is shame, that I'm gonna keep punishing myself and keep flowing with this horrible little tributary of shame that doesn't really take you anywhere. It just gets you caught in an eddy of the flow. But if you notice and start tuning into that feeling of love, because it's like gets really, 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 really subtle, and then you become sort of an expert at knowing exactly what is right and wrong for you. Because everybody is different. And this goes as far as, like we have these prescriptive ideas of what people's life should look like. And we say routine is the best thing. Instilling good habits is the best thing. And it might be that we look at people who have a routine that they love, and those people do report great quality of life, but not everybody who doesn't have a routine or doesn't have this certain canon of accepted habits, it might be that person is just not really a person who does well with a routine. I feel like I'll often feel this kind of like cloud behind me of like, but where's my routine? Why am I not doing these things every day that I really love to do? Like, why am I not doing yoga every day? Why am I not making my coffee the night before every night? Because it's something that really makes me happy when I wake up in the morning and it's already made for me. Why do I not do that every night? And so I start punishing myself. But really, we are diverse humans, and when that happens, it's because we're letting another part of ourselves come in and meet the part that's not really in alignment with what that is. And then you're going to have this little bit of friction, but it's not with shame versus love. It's about like, who am I really? It's about integrating those two parts of you. And if you could let yourself have this acceptance of, I'm going to see what flows for me every day. I'm going to see what's different and flows for me every hour. And I don't expect every day to look the same. Then you can actually start healing. Because your personality and your identity, if you've been minimizing yourself and discounting everything that you feel your whole life, your personality is actually fragmented throughout your brain, where there's a part of you that doesn't approve of this part over here. So your brain has separated these parts and kind of compartmentalized exactly who you are, because your brain knows like, why are we doing this thing we don't want to do? And so your brain like creates this person that's like, oh, I love working out. I love the feeling I get after I've gone for a run. And then we're going to separate that part of my personality so that when that person is saying like, oh, I love it when I've gone for a run, I feel so great afterwards. I never want to do it beforehand, but I always love it afterwards. What you've actually done is create this solidified compartment between this part of your personality and this part of your personality, this part of your identity, your energetic body, and this part of your energetic body. And here's the thing, this part of you is just as valuable as this part of you. And in fact, in this type of instance, you're letting one part of your personality, one part of your energy, bully and tear down another part of you. So what you're doing is actually abusing yourself. And it makes it so that it makes them clash. So that when these two parts of you come up against each other, it becomes more and more painful to try to override the crevice, the space, the hurdle between these two parts. It becomes to bust through that wall and get to this part that actually enjoys running. And maybe you are a person who likes to run, but maybe you make yourself on days when you don't really want to too. And so then even running becomes this thing that like is you don't even want to do, and you're like, well, who am I really do actually love to go run, like. And it's because you have told yourself, this is something that that's gonna be used to abuse me, to abuse my sense of who I am, to abuse my instinct of what I should and shouldn't do. And your brain just keeps compartmentalizing all these things. And so when you start listening, that is when you can have these more subtle experiences of having the parts of you kind of come up to the edge of each other and have this subtle friction that you can actually work with, because this is very, very hard to work with when you have all these fragmented parts of you. It's very like polar, it's just really hard to do that. The friction is too much and it bounces off, and you don't end up with an ability to integrate these two parts, because these two parts of you hate each other. But if you subtly start listening to your ability to make a decision about which things in life you want to do and which things you don't, then that kind of gives this, you start to take down this wall over here, and you start letting these parts of you talk to each other. And you start discovering, like, what is it about this part of me that often does not want to or ends up not making my coffee? What is it about this part of me or what is it that's happening in my life on the times when I don't want to make my coffee? What is it that's like about my mood during the day? It turns you into more of an investigator, to where you can actually start to figure out, like, how do I get these parts of me together? And maybe it is that, like, you only want to make coffee on certain days, and you need to, and then you come up with this natural feeling of like, oh, it's going to be okay if I don't make coffee the night before, because I want to fully accept who I was in that moment. Or it might be that in addressing this friction, you're actually able to completely integrate these parts and create something that looks like a habit or a routine, like something that really makes you happy. But first of all, it needs to be something that's actually going to give you that boost of this is me, versus that pull down in your stomach of like, this is not me. Shame versus love. You have to first pay attention to, when am I feeling that and when am I not, and just blindly just go with it as much as you can get yourself to. And it's okay at first if you can't quite figure out how to accomplish going against something, going against this pull, like for example, going to a job that you don't like. It's not easy to just immediately say, okay, I feel this like shame, I'm just not going to do that. Because in quitting your job, like the first day that you start noticing that might be something that actually gives you more of a dip down. So it's subtle, and you're going to start paying attention and just noticing it. And there are going to be a lot of things that you can actually start gradually changing your life and changing who you are, to really take up for yourself and figure out exactly who you are. People are asking all the time, well, what do you like to do? Do more of that stuff. If you're a victim of abuse, and a lot of times just a victim of trauma in general, you probably do not know what those things are. And you're told that there's something wrong with you for not even knowing what it is that you like to do, or what you really love, what gives you joy. You're told that there's something wrong with you. And it's like, the people, you ask somebody for help and that's what they say is like, well, what do you like to do? That's really what you should be doing all the time. But victims of abuse are like, I have no idea. They don't even know how to, like, they don't know that they're actually different from everybody else, and that their boundaries have been imposed on their whole life. And this is why they don't really have a sense of what do I like to do? Who am I? Versus not. They might not, because they've muted this part of their body. It's been a long time since they've even noticed, like, what are the things and the activities that really make me happy, that put me into flow, to where everything just kind of naturally happens in my life, to where you naturally think or plan, I'm going to do a set of yoga today, or I'm going to go meditate right now. And it just naturally flows, versus this feeling of like, I've got to drag myself to do it. I've got to drag myself to play the video that is the one type of video that I can watch that I'm kind of sick of, but I've got to play that video so that I can do the workout, so that I feel better about myself and don't punish myself for the rest of the day. But you know what? You're already punishing yourself. You're already making yourself feel shame. And if you just bust through that, you are reinforcing to your body that it doesn't matter, that you don't matter. So this might be called how to do things that you don't want to do. But the takeaway that I really want you to start paying attention to is the broad takeaway is, do not do things that you don't want to do. Don't do them. Whether it's sex, whether it's anything, and I can talk more specifically about these types of situations or these types of common areas where people are told, go ahead and do that thing you don't want to do and then you'll enjoy it. Don't do that. That's really bad advice. It's really bad advice. Don't do stuff you don't want to do. Honor yourself. Honor your sense of what you do and don't want to do. And if you can't tell, which I couldn't really tell at first, find one thing that does make you that you can actually tell about, even if it's an extreme thing. Like, what is it? Something that gives you a pit in your stomach? Is it going to work out? Is it going to the gym? I keep using that example because for me, like, for a very long time, I just felt like a complete outsider and like I was doing something wrong, that I didn't want to be a member of a gym and go to the gym, because the times that I tried to do that, I would be like, I'd join and then just not go. And then the more I would not go, the more I would give myself anxiety about it. And the more I would not want to go. And I was one of these people too, who would go and then feel good about myself afterwards. But in order to get there, I'd shamed myself for how many days in a row. Like, there's no reason for that. And if you're doing something that's physical to your body, if you're putting your body into an activity that's physical in particular, or mental, when you don't want to do it, you are training yourself to say that the only reason that I'm going to be valuable is if I am able to bust through my own boundaries and start doing the stuff that everybody tells me is right. In that instance, you're just taking your abuser, if you only have one, which you do not. If you're a victim of abuse, there's likely a constellation of people and entities around you who are also fully taking advantage of your boundaries. There might be one who's in your face all the time, like your spouse or your parents, but around that are all kinds of systems that are keeping it in check. But what you're doing when you tell your body, we're going to do this thing even though we don't want to do it, you're taking the abuse victim and maybe you're scrubbing that person out, but you are just filling in the abuser with a part of you that's a bully. And you're telling yourself, I have to bully myself in order to have the quality of life that I want. And it's not true. And it's extremely damaging. And it's confusing. And it makes people very unable to recover from their trauma in a way that is authentic and in a way that sets them up to be able to be successful and to have boundaries going forward. So find something small that gives you that pull down, and find something happy that gives you a lift. And this one can be just something like, for example, if you see a text message pop up from somebody that you're excited to actually see that person, even if it, like, sometimes it could be just something really tiny, like you get a text message that makes you laugh from an acquaintance or you get an email that's like, hey, there's this activity happening in a couple of weeks, and you kind of have this little tiny jump of like, okay, there's something happening in 2 weeks, gives me something to look forward to. And you probably don't go through this process, but you might feel a little lift in those types of situations. Somebody says, like, do you want to go to this concert? And in that moment, you have a little lift. And I'm not talking about actually going to the concert on the day, but if there's a little lift, start trying to find like just 1 or 2 examples of what this feels like. And then really, really hone in on when do you feel that subtle feeling the most. So don't do stuff you don't want to do. And we're going to keep trying to talk about different ways to heal trauma that are not the standard ways, especially for abuse victims. And yeah, so my name's Alice, and yeah, taking care of you. This is what we're going to do. We're not doing things we don't want to do anymore.